great to be with you guys today, and I'm excited to share a little bit of kind of our success and some of the things that we learned in doing this. Give you a little bit of background. Soar.com is a platform for human development. We've got thousands of coaches all over the world that help people improve their lives. And then we connect them with clients around the world. And we also build some tools and technology to help individuals thrive. In my role as Chief Revenue Officer, I'm accountable for driving the revenue and the growth of the business. Marketing and sales functions roll up to me. I wear a lot of hats. And most of our sales have happened through Zoom or through phone, and they've been kind of live connections with buyers. It's your traditional inside sales model. And so what we did was, we had a small inside sales team, and we're, working to continue to grow our revenue. As, a co-founder and chief revenue officer on a small team, it's hard to, wear a lot of hats, and you cover a lot of ground. And, so one of the things that I was constantly kind of torn between was time with my sales team, time with Rhett and his team, coaching and working on optimizing that sales strategy and that sales efficacy. And so when we came across some new capabilities through artificial intelligence and neural networks to be able to give us real-time insight to what's happening on those calls, and then identify successes and replicate those successes, it was a game changer for us. All right, so here's the dashboard that we see when logging into the platform. What I've done is I've created some tags, some keywords, and some campaigns that I care about as a revenue leader, as a sales leader. And what I've done is what this will do then is this will run all of the calls through those parameters and spit out a report. This is our insight report. So what you can see here is 5 different salespeople in this report that are talking about a specific subject. You can see the percent of time that they're speaking versus listening. So, Jackson is speaking 54% of the time. You can see the flow of the conversation. So this speaking versus listening graph essentially takes the call, it breaks it into deciles or tenths, and then for each decile, it shows what percent of the time that sales rep is speaking. So it's pretty easy to point out an outlier. You can see that most of the sales reps are kind of following the same pattern, but Jackson's a bit of an outlier. He's talking less in some circumstances and more in others. And so that might be something to pay closer attention to. When you start looking into switches, this is a really helpful chart. So what it shows is that for Jackson, he's got an average of 47.8 switches in a conversation, of which only 34 of those are meaningful switches. That's the time that it goes back and forth from the rep to the client. In my fewer examples, I have fewer switches, 34, and 27 of those are meaningful switches. So the non-meaningful switches are going to be things like someone says, okay, or you ask someone a question and they give you a one-word response. That's a less meaningful switch in the conversation. Talking segments tells you a little bit about the length and depth of those conversations. And again, this can all be configured differently, but this gives you a sense of the call structure, the format, the flow of conversation, the speed and pace. You can see I've come down from 162 words a minute where I was when I started this to 146. And Rhett, you were talking in a much more consistent pace at 136 words a minute. Questions asked, so you see how many questions people are asking over the course of a conversation, how many questions per call quartile, so that breaks the call into fourths. So you start to see, okay, I'm kind of distributing mine throughout the calls, a few in the beginning, second quartile, third quartile at the end. Filler terms, so you start to see what are people saying, just, so, really, great. Key terms, so in our case, we were talking about funnels and boot camps and different things. Those are product-centric terms. Those are customized by us. I'm sure we could have put just about any key term in there and gotten this report. Cold terms, we put in things that show low focus, where we're talking about us instead of talking about the client and their needs. call stats. You start to see how many calls during this time period, what the average duration is of those calls. You can see we had one rep who likes to talk a lot, and their calls were significantly longer than the other reps. So great opportunities to give feedback. In the time frame that we looked at, there were 160 calls with the key terms that we were searching for within this report. So you start to see a little bit about how that works. One thing that I think about when it comes to leading sales teams is, you've got to celebrate successes, right? You've got to, trumpet that horn or ring that bell when you see something great happen. And that's one of the ways that you reinforce positive behavior. So I like this share feature here. One thing I'll like to do is go share via URL, and I'll grab this link. I'll go into our team Slack channel, and I'll say, hey, check out this awesome call that Rhett just did. Look at the success that we just had. And it's a way of recognizing and reinforcing really positive behaviors. You can do that through email, through, team communication platforms, but it makes it easy to take this learning and this moment and take it off of this platform into whatever other environments, your team is collaborating in. So that's just a couple of examples of how the platform works, but hopefully, Rhett, that gives you a little bit of insight to how we're using it and getting a lot of value from it.